జ్ఞానానందమయం దేవం నిర్మల స్ఫటికాకృతిం ఆధారం సర్వవిద్యానాం హయగ్రీవం ఉపాస్మహే లక్ష్మీనాథ సమారంభాం నాథయామున మధ్యమాం అస్మదాచార్య పర్యంతాం వందే గురుపరంపరాం. Namaskaram to all of you. I welcome you all to this new series titled Practice What the Puranas Preach. In this series, we are going to learn or listen to a few remarkable stories from the Puranas which can give us knowledge or wisdom which will guide us through our lives even today. It is truly astonishing that texts that are hundreds and thousands of years old can still bear relevance today. But we are going to learn how they are relevant, and not just knowing about them. We have to practice what the Puranas preach. Every Siddhanta or every philosophy considers Jnanam or knowledge to be the primary goal. Once knowledge is achieved, then we will know or we will be equipped to make the right decisions in our world, in our lives. Therefore, this Jnanam or the attainment of true knowledge is a very important pursuit in every being's life. In our Bharata Desham, in Sanatana Dharma, this pursuit of knowledge has been studied extensively, and there is a concept called Vidya Sthanams that has been formulated by our ancestors. Vidya means knowledge or wisdom. Sthanam means a seat or a source of knowledge or wisdom. So Vidya Sthanam refers to all the sources of knowledge that we can accumulate and therefore make our lives better. Our ancestors have framed 18 such Vidya Sthanams: Purana, Nyaya, Mimamsa, Dharmashastra, Anga Mishritaha, Veda Sthanani Vidyanam, Dharmasya cha Chaturdasha. This is a very famous shloka. It lists the 18 Vidya Sthanams that have been formulated in Sanatana Dharma. The goal of Sanatana Dharma itself is not merely spiritual enlightenment or mukti alone. The greatness or the true value of our Dharma is that it aims at holistic development to enable us to move towards spiritual enlightenment. Of course, I am not going to lie to you. Spiritual upliftment or enlightenment and the attainment of mukti is the ultimate goal that our scriptures teach us about. But it is not the case that they only talk about betterment in the spiritual field. The texts that we get from our ancestors, these 18 Vidya Sthanams, have been so structured that when we read them, when we know more and more about these Vidya Sthanams, our life will improve holistically. The ancestors did not want us to be in poverty or have a very miserable life and yet be very devoted to Bhagavan. They have given us means by which we can lead a very peaceful, happy life, a satisfied life, and also aim for spiritual upliftment or enlightenment. So these 18 Vidya Sthanams will address each and every aspect of a person's life so that he can improve in all aspects. We will go through shortly. Purana, Nyaya, Mimamsa, Dharmashastranga Mishritaha, Veda Sthanani Vidyanam. The shloka says the 18 Vidya Sthanams are as follows. First, there are the 4 Vedas: Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda and Atharvana Veda. These Vedas teach us about the inimitable truths or the dharma that we are following. Then there are 6 ancillary subjects. There are 6 angams which are called Shiksha, Vyakaranam, Chandas, Niruktam, Jyotisham and Kalpa. These are 6 ancillary texts or ancillary shastrams which will help us understand the true meaning of the Vedas. Then there are 8 other Vidya Sthanams, 4 Vedas plus 6 Angams totals to 10 Vidya Sthanams. What are the other 8? The shloka says Purana, Nyaya, Mimamsa, Dharmashastra. Puranas are the 18 Puranas that we are going to learn about in this series. Then there is something called Nyaya Shastram which teaches us logical reasoning, which trains our mind to think in a very logical and reasonable manner. Then Mimamsa is the study of how to interpret texts. Then Dharma Shastram gives us the day-to-day itinerary that we should follow, the basic conduct or achara that we should follow. So Purana, Nyaya, Mimamsa, Dharma Shastra. Then Ayurveda. Ayurveda is very important because only if the mind and the body are sound in health, only if they are hale and healthy, we will be able to concentrate on higher planes. We won't be able to concentrate on mukti when we are famished or when we are very hungry. So the Vedas say, take care of your body, go through Ayurveda, follow what the Ayurveda says and keep your body healthy. Then come to read the Vedas, read the Upanishads for spiritual enlightenment. So the Ayurveda is a very important tool to keep our body happy and sound. Then Ayurveda, Dhanurveda, the art of warfare is also considered to be a Vidyasthana, because only if we are protected. The art of warfare is not for common people like us. It is for the kings and the soldiers, Kshatriyas, who need to know how to defend this country so that the people within the country can follow their dharma without fear. If there is fear that I will be killed at any point of time, it is impossible to follow dharma or think about the Atman or Paramatman. Only if we are secure, we have a feeling of security, can we concentrate on things that are beyond the senses. Therefore, Dhanurveda, which is the art of warfare, is also one of the Vidyasthanams. Ayurveda, Dhanurveda, Gandharva Veda. Gandharva Veda is about songs. It is about the Carnatic music and singing. So the Shastram, it is a very detailed, structured study of music. That is Gandharva Veda. Why is that helpful? That is required because the mind is pacified. It is calmed down when we listen to music. When we are very stressed, many of us follow this practice. When we are stressed or when we are very angry, when we are afraid that we would utter something that is not right, then we shut ourselves away, we go into a room, we put on some light music and listen to it so that our minds calm down. So Gandharva Veda, which will help us to have a peaceful mind, is also included in the Vidyasthanams. Then finally, Artha Shastram, how to procure wealth and sustain or protect the wealth that we have, is also very important, because without money or without wealth, it is impossible to do dharma karyams also or to help other people who are in need. So the 18 Vidyasthanams are the 4 Vedas, the 6 Angams or the ancillary Shastras which help us understand the Vedas, then Artha Shastra, Gandharva Veda, Dhanur Veda, Ayurveda, Nyaya, Mimamsa, then Dharma Shastras, and finally the Puranas. Now the question is, how do the Puranas help us? Why should we learn about Puranas? The Puranas are known to have stories which have documented what has happened in our Bharata Desha much before other written documentation was available. The Puranas are a historical recollection or noting down of everything that has happened in our Desha. So unless we know of our rich heritage and the centuries old history that we have inherited from, it is not possible for us to know how we should go forward. When we don't know how we got to this position, it is impossible to make corrections in our path. So it is very important to study the Puranas, and the significance is that they teach us all the values that we have to follow. It is not enough if a student studies well in a school. They also insist on very good manners and values, isn't it? In the report card, when the son or daughter comes back at the end of the year, they will say mathematics, A+, physical education, A+, chemistry, biology, social science, everything. At the end, there will be moral studies, or there will be conduct. The conduct of the child or the student is also carefully it is maintained, or it is looked into by the teachers and the administration. Why is that so? He can be a very bad person also. He might be cruel, he might want to torture others, but as long as he knows mathematics very well, the school should be happy. But it is not the case. The school wants holistic development, because unless someone is a good person, it is of no use to the society if he is a very wise person. Therefore, the Puranas teach us how to be a good person. But these are not two separate shastrams. The Upanishads talk about something on a higher plane. They talk about mukti, they talk about Atman and meditation. The Puranas talk about common values. It is not so disjoint like this. The two are very much interlinked. Swami Parashara Bhatta, who was an Acharya who lived during Swami Ramanuja's time and a little after it, also says, Artha Vyaktihi Purana-Smritishu. Unless you read the Puranas, Artha Vyakti, the meaning of the Vedas and the Vedanta, the Upanishads, cannot be understood clearly, explicitly, unless you learn the Puranas. The Purana itself says, Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samupabrahmayet Bibheti Alpashrutad Vedaha Mamayam Pratarishyati. The Veda is very afraid of a person who tries to interpret the Vedas without learning the Itihasas and Puranas. The Itihasas are Ramayana and Mahabharata. The Puranas are 18 in number, and there are other Puranas also which have come out later on. These Puranas and Itihasas are not merely stories. Through stories, they convey a very deep meaning. The story is just a sugar coating. If you have to give a medicine to a child, if the medicine is very bitter, the child won't swallow it immediately. So what do? Homeopathic medicine especially is very sweet. We might ask, how is other Ayurvedic medicine and everything is very bitter, but homeopathic medicine is very sweet? It is because the child has to be tricked into taking that medicine, or he should not be dejected to take that medicine or averse to taking that medicine just because it is bitter. Similarly, the truths or the Upadesha that the Vedanta gives us will be very bitter. It will be cutthroat, it will be to the point, and it is very hard for us to digest when someone points out our mistakes. Therefore, the Puranas adopt a little different approach. The Puranas try to sugarcoat this bitter medicine or this concept or truth within a story. The story is very easy to learn. It is very interesting and it pulls the reader in. And at the end of the story, when there is a moral or a very important value that has to be taught, then that value will be imbibed in the listener without him knowing about it at all. In all our households, when we grew up, we would not have known that Rama is God, or when Rama took avatar, what all he did or what are his significances or greatness. But we were all told stories about Rama. Most importantly, it was not about the fight that Rama had with Ravana. We would talk about how Rama and Guha were great friends. We would talk about how Krishna, when Kuchela came to Dwaraka, how Krishna took care of Kuchela and did service to him and gave all the money to Kuchela. These stories are important because they teach us how to lead a very good life and be of use to others also. We must never be a burden to others. We must not make others fear us. Krishna in the Gita says, Yasmat nodvijate lokaha, lokat nodvijate cha yaha. A person is said to be a good person only if he is not afraid of anybody else and if nobody else is afraid of him. When would I be afraid of someone? When I have done wrong to them, or I have done some bad deed or something that has adversely affected them, then when they come to confront me, I would be afraid. Similarly, if I am a very cruel person, then someone who sees me would immediately be afraid. Krishna says you must not be both of these kinds. You must not be afraid of anybody else. So don't do wrong. Nobody should be afraid of you. So don't harm others. Only such a person is called a yogi, is called a good person. Therefore, the Puranas teach us all the values that we need to learn, but they quote it in stories. The stories are not concocted. That is also a very popular argument that is seen these days. People say, we agree that the Puranas must be read, but the Puranas are not historical records. The Puranas are stories that are concocted in order to convey a message. Otherwise, how is it possible that each and every story, each and every event will convey a message? You take a book, you read each and every page, every line and every page is so impactful, so powerful. How can that be? We know our lives. If we document our lives, day-to-day happenings are unimportant. They don't convey any meaning or they don't impart value to others. In my whole life, there might be 10 or 15 instances which would be of use to others, which would be learning experiences. But if you take the Puranas, each and every page or shloka is so impactful and filled with meaning. So people say it is not possible for such a text to come about naturally. So it should have been concocted in order to convey certain messages. But we must understand, suppose someone writes his own autobiography, or someone writes about someone else's life, a biography, then only the significant events are written about in the biography. No one writes, I got up on December 15th of 2020. I got up at 6 a.m. I brushed my teeth. I took bath. I cooked this meal and had it. I was not able to eat properly because it was too early. I was late for my cab. I had to leave immediately. No one writes about all this. They have 15 chapters. They can write only what is most significant in their lives. This is one person's life. Imagine there are 100 crore people. Each one of them has a normal mundane life, and there are important events in their lives also. Suppose you collate all those events and give them as a book, then every chapter and every page of that book will give you epiphanies, because they are not from a short period of time. They are not from the mundane lives of people. They are very special happenings in one person's life. Maybe one or two such instances may occur. But if you take so many people, the history of Bharata Desham is centuries old. Therefore, if you collect all these stories, then you can very well arrive at a book called the Puranas, where each and every story is so impactful and meaningful. So these stories were not concocted. These stories were hand-picked from the lives of sages and common people, so that future generations can know these values and benefit from the learnings of the ancestors. So these Puranas write down, or they record what has happened in our Bharata Desham. That is because we are able to access only those Puranas. I am not saying that Puranas exist only in this Jambu Dvipam Bharata Varsha of this Andakataham. This, according to the cosmology of the Puranas, we live in a place called Jambu Dvipam. Inside that Bharata Varsha. I am not saying that Puranas exist only in Bharata Varsha. We are able to get only those Puranas. Bhagavan takes avatars in each and every nook and corner of the world. He did not take avatar only in this India that we know. He might have been born in many other worlds, in Swarga, in Bhuhu, Bhuvaha, Suvaha, Mahaha, Atala, Patala, etc. I am not able to access the Puranas or the other texts that have been written in those worlds. I am able to access only these Puranas, because these are the written account of whatever has happened in our Bharata Desham in this geographical location. So these Puranas are very much relevant to us, because they give a valuable knowledge, irreplaceable knowledge that will help us lead a very good life for our own betterment and for the benefit of others around us. So these Puranas, who were they written by? We say that the Puranas were given by Lord Brahma. Yasmin kalpetu yat proktam Puranam Brahmana Pura. A verse says, Brahma used to preach these Puranas to his Sishyas, to all his disciples, at various points of time. There are many kalpas. A kalpa is a cycle of Srishti. Srishti and Pralaya come one after the other. In this cycle, in each kalpa or at different points of time, Brahma used to narrate these Puranas. These Puranas were later collated and structured by Vedavyasa. So we say that Vedavyasa authored the Puranas also. We say Brahma authored the Puranas. They are both true. Brahma initially narrated the Puranas to his disciples. Yaspin kalpetu yat proktam Puranam Brahmana Pura. Then they were segregated. They were categorized by Vedavyasa. They were categorized into three groups: Sattvika Purana, Rajasa Purana and Tamasa Purana. We all know that there are 18 Puranas. In total, these 18 Puranas all together contain about 4 lakh shlokas. Ramayana has 24,000 shlokas. Mahabharata has 1,25,000 shlokas. These are the two itihasas. If you collect all the Puranas, it is much larger than the Mahabharata, 4 times larger than the Mahabharata. They have around 4 lakh shlokas. These 18 Puranas were divided into 3 categories: Sattvika Purana, Rajasa Purana and Tamasa Purana. I just now mentioned that Brahma used to narrate these Puranas to his disciples. Brahma will at different points of time have different gunas that overpower the other two gunas. We all have Sattva guna, Rajo guna and Tamo guna. At one point of time, Sattva guna will overpower the other two. In the morning, say Brahma Muhurtam, 4:30 to 6 or 6:30, Sattva guna is very high, the other two are lower. In the afternoon, Rajo guna is very high. Once it is 10 p.m. or 12 a.m. in midnight, Tamo guna overpowers the other two and we have to sleep, we have to take rest now. Similarly, Brahma also is within the samsara. He too is bound by Sattva guna, Rajo guna and Tamo guna. Therefore, at different points of time, when Brahma narrates these stories, he narrates some of them when Sattva guna is on the rise. He narrated some of them when Rajo guna overpowered the other two gunas. He narrated a few of them, say 6 of them, when Tamo guna was at its peak. So, Sattvika Purana are those Puranas which were narrated by Brahma when Sattva guna was at its peak. Similarly, Rajasa and Tamasa, 6 Puranas are said to be Sattvika Puranas. Vishnu Purana, Bhagavata Purana, Narada Purana, Garuda Purana, Padma Purana, Varaha Purana. These are the 6 Sattvika Puranas. Then Rajasa Puranas are Brahma, Brahmanda, Brahma Vaivarta, Markandeya, Vamana, Bhavishya Purana. These 6 are said to be Rajasa Puranas. Then Tamasa Puranas are Matsya, Kurma, Linga, Shiva, Skanda, Agni. These 6 Puranas are said to be Tamasa Puranas. So, Sattvika Puranas are narrated when Sattva guna is very high for Brahma. When Sattva guna is high, our knowledge is very clear. We are not confused about anything. So, the Sattvika Puranas can be taken to be most close to truth. They are the closest to truth that is possible. The Rajasa Puranas are narrated when Brahma has a lot of Rajoguna. Rajoguna itself kindles desire within us. So, it might be that Brahma had narrated these with some ulterior motives also. So, they have to be taken with a pinch of salt. You cannot take Rajasa Puranas to be completely true factually, historically. Then, Tamasa Puranas were narrated by him when he himself was lazy or he himself was drowsy. The Tamoguna causes drowsiness and laziness or lack of caution. So, Tamasa Puranas have to be studied carefully. Only those aspects which are not contradictory to the Sattvika and Rajasa Puranas can be taken to be true. Others where I contradict myself when I am awake, I will say that I am 6 feet high. Then when I am sleeping, if I am very drowsy and someone wakes me and forces me to answer a question, how tall are you? I might even say I am 8 feet high, I am 4 feet high, I can say anything. Those words that are uttered when I am lazy or drowsy have to be carefully taken so that they are not contradictory to others. Only those things which are not contradictory to other words which were uttered by me when I was awake can be taken to be the truth. Therefore, Sattvika Puranas, Rajasa Puranas and Tamasa Puranas were segregated by Vedavyasa and structured saying these are the Puranas that fall in these categories. Now, what is a Purana? We have seen how the Puranas are significant to us because they give us values and they give us the basic conduct which will make us a good person and take us on the right path towards spiritual enlightenment. The Sanatana Dharma aims at spiritual enlightenment, but through holistic development of our lives. Our body has to be sound, our mind has to be calm, we have to have wealth and we should be able to protect it. We must know how to think logically, we must know how to analyze a text, and using these faculties, we have to read the Itihasa and Purana and then know what values we should inculcate in ourselves and then read the Upanishads and the Vedas so that we know what Dharma is and who Paramatma is. This is the whole path that Sanatana Dharma has formed for us. So, the Puranas are very important and they are relevant even today because the concepts or the facts that they talk about are very much true even today. When will something be false or irrelevant? When the subject that a text talks about is no more in use or it is no more true, then the text is also useless. Someone, say 500 years ago, a scientist wrote that the atom was like, there are many models. for the atom. It was not known that the atom has divisible parts within it like the proton and the electron. Earlier, the atom was considered to be indivisible. A textbook was written, say, hundreds of years ago, saying atom was indivisible. Today, is that textbook valid? It is no more valid because the concept or the object that was explained in that text has been understood even more deeply, and the concept itself has changed now. So, this is not valid anymore. But the Puranas will never become invalid because they talk about eternal truths. They talk about the Jivatma, they talk about Paramatma, they talk about Mukti, they talk about Dharma, Papa and Punya. All these are eternal truths which will never go out of vogue, or which will never become useless. Therefore, the Puranas also bear relevance today. So, in this series, we are going to handpick a few stories. We don't have time to read the whole Puranas and learn 4 lakh shlokas. So, we will handpick a few stories from the Puranas and see how they can be applied to our lives even today. Now, I was talking about how a Purana is defined. Sargascha, Pratisargascha, Vamsho Manvantaranicha, Vamshanucharitam Cheti, Puranam Panchalakshanam. There are 5 things that a Purana must talk about. Sargaha, that is creation of this universe. Pratisargaha, destruction of this universe. Vamshaha, the lineages of the rulers who had monopoly or who were ruling this whole country or this Bharata Desha and all the provinces around it. Vamshaha. Manvantaranicha. Manvantara is a very large time period. Each kalpa of Brahma has around 1000 Chaturyugas. There, the 1000 Chaturyugas, which is about one Chaturyuga is 43 lakh years in our calculations. So, 1000 such Chaturyugas are one daytime for Brahma. There are 14 Manus who are in charge of these 1000 Chaturyugas. So, the time period where each Manu is ruling is called a Manvantara. So, these Puranas talk about the different Manvantaras that are present also. Finally, Vamsha Anucharitam Cheti. They talk about the stories of all the people who are in the lineages of great kings and sages. All these are documented. The creation of this universe, the destruction of this universe, the lineages of sages and kings who ruled this world, and how they faced many difficulties or how they uplifted themselves from the samsara. And finally, how are the Manvantaras divided, who are the rishis, who are the devatas, who is supreme in each and every Manvantara. All this is explained in the Puranas. So, these Puranas finally talk to us about Dharma and Tattvams. Dharma is what we must practice. Tattvam is the concept or the truth that we must understand. Both of these are inimitable. We call our Dharma as Sanatana Dharma. Sanatana means eternal. It does not merely mean a beginningless. Usually Sanatana means very old, but here Sanatana means eternal. How can a Dharma be eternal? Because it is preached by the eternal Vedas. When the source of something is eternal, then the concept that is understood from that text is also eternal. So, the Dharma that we follow is also eternal, but we have lost many of these. We have stopped reading these Puranas and learning about Dharma also. So, even today, these Puranas bear significance because when we read them, we will learn so many things, intricacies and important significant aspects of our Dharma. Similarly, when we read about the Puranas, they talk about different avatars of Bhagavan. They talk about creation, destruction and all these. Bhagavan is also an eternal entity. He is always very sweet to learn about. Bhagavan has a name in Tamil, Aravamudan, Arada. He never goes cold. A porridge or a soup can be taken only when it is hot. It should not be boiling hot. It should not become stale also or cold also. It should be at the right temperature. Similarly, this Bhagavan, how much ever you enjoy him, how much ever you learn about him, he never becomes stale. He never becomes boring. He is always so exciting to learn about. So, Bhagavan is also Aravamudan. Dharma is also Sanatana, eternal Dharma. Therefore, the Puranas that talk about these two are also eternal and also always exciting. The word Purana itself means Pura Api Navam Puranam. Pura, it is very old, it is ancient. Api, even then, yet. Navam. It is very new. How can something very old be very new? When it gives you new experiences each and every time you learn about it. It is knowledge that we have now lost and we are trying to regain by reading the Puranas. We want to know about Paramatma. We want to know about the Jivatma and this samsara, how to get away from the samsara, how we can perform dharma and help others in this world also while concentrating on our own spiritual enlightenment. All this is talked about in the Puranas. So, Pura api navam, even though they are very old, they are applicable even today. They are relevant even today. In fact, they are most relevant even today. I would say that more than mathematics or chemistry or biology, these Puranas and the stories, the values that they teach us are most important. This is because they explicitly or clearly describe to us how to know about Paramatma, what to know about him, and how to practice dharma. I will give you an example. The Veda says, Na himsyat sarva bhutani, do not harm any creature. Now, this dictum or this rule has to be followed by everybody, but we might have some questions. How should one follow this? In which situation should we follow ahimsa? Is himsa or is harming someone never agreed to, or are there certain exceptions to this rule? All this has to be known for us to practice it. When we are just preaching and we just want to listen to something, we can say don't harm anybody and go away. Now, when a doctor has to perform a surgery, he needs to know whether what he is doing will be construed as himsa or not, whether that is harming somebody or not. If the doctor thinks that cutting a person and removing a tumor is harm to that person, then he would keep his scalpel down. He would not perform the surgery at all. That is not good for the patient. That is not good for the doctor as per his dharma also. So, we should know what are the exceptions. We should know when it is okay to do some harm, when it is never okay to do harm, whether self-defense is agreed to, or whether when someone is going against dharma, is it okay to censure them or is it okay to punish them? All this has to be known. This is not there in the Vedas. The Vedas just say, do not harm any creature. To know the intricacies of this dharma, we have to go through the Puranas, the Dharma Shastras, the Itihasas, so that we learn about more and more instances, the lives of people who practiced ahimsa, and through that we will be able to know how we can also practice ahimsa in our life. Therefore, the Puranas are most important even in this day and age. So, in this series, I welcome you all to go through with me a few stories from the Puranas. We will talk about normal living in this world. We will talk about Atma, Paramatma also. We will talk about wealth. We will talk about charity. We will talk about diseases. We will talk about Prayaschittams, Papa and Punya. All the whole gambit of issues that we face today are addressed in the Puranas also. When we go through the stories slowly and ponder over what they say, it is not a novel that we can read. It is not an imaginary story that is just nice to read about and we can go through them. I bought Harry Potter book yesterday. By today morning, the child has completed all 500 pages of that book. There is no use if we do that. We have to learn a few stories and ponder over them. We have to learn and imbibe what value that story is talking about and try to put that to practice. So, we will try to do that in the coming episodes. I request you all to follow this series, subscribe to this new English channel that we have started and benefit from the stories that the Puranas have to offer. We will pray to Bhagavan, Lord Sriman Narayana, that these stories should help us better our lives and for the betterment of society also. Thank you.